We started the cafe 4 years ago. We had protests, we had disruptions, we had security fees. It was pretty crazy. But when we opened the center 2 years ago, things started to change. Now we provide domestic abuse programs for men. We provide legal services for men who can't afford to get a lawyer to go to family court and fight to continue to have a presence in the lives of their children. We provide a variety of mental health programs, peer support, counseling, therapy, etc. We provide a fathering after separation divorce program, which again empowers dads so they can continue to play a healthy, active role in the life of their child. These are really key programs that mostly don't exist anywhere. Now there's some of those programs in Toronto. We want to bring them to Ottawa. Since we've done that, the nature, the attitude towards men's issues really has changed. Now we are working in partnership with victim service agencies, with police, with family service agencies, with homeless shelters. These organizations are actually referring clients to us. They're working in partnership on anti-abuse conferences, on the fathering programs that we do. So I think if we can bring an institutional center here to Ottawa, then that could be a game changer in the capital region, along with the advocacy work that you heard David talk about. So we're going to play a short video. If you do have to go, that's okay. If you can watch it, that's even better. You've been given little envelopes, and if you haven't, perhaps one of the volunteers, Meg, or somebody else can make sure to give you a little envelope, where if you do decide to make a contribution, become a member at $60, or make any other kind of contribution, cash, credit card, we'll take whatever you got. Just fill out the little card in the envelope, or put in whatever funds you can contribute. You can do that here, you can do that online on our website. But please help us get to this milestone now that we have this window of opportunity thanks to the generosity of Hal Roback. Okay, Victor, can we show the video? Are we good to go?
I would say somebody that was in my position now that I thought that I was at a point of no return. I was at a point of almost suicidal thoughts. And I would say to anybody that feels hopeless, that it feels that they can't get any help, there is a place for help. And you don't have to pay, and the people are actually caring. They will give you support, they will put you on a regiment, and you will get help.
Having all the services in one place has helped tremendously in reducing the stress of an already stressful situation. Everything is very thorough and in-depth.
I was really happy when I did contact the Canadian Centre for Men and Families. That there was a program that was designed specifically for men that were in my situation. And even just finding out that there was an agency dedicated to helping men.
My financial situation wasn't that good, and I found out that it was free. I didn't expect too much in the beginning, but since I've been coming, I've noticed that my relationship with my family has gotten a lot better. I've been a lot calmer in dealing with people, and it also has helped me to open bonds between my parents, especially my father.
At the center, we're changing public perceptions about men.
I wasn't concerned that I wouldn't be taken seriously. However, after I left the relationship, I did go to the police and I wasn't taken seriously. The nature of the violence was there was a lot of emotional abuse, verbal abuse, that eventually escalated into physical abuse, including being approached, attacked with a knife at one point in time.
I was in a lot of distress due to a recent divorce, and I was looking for a place that offered support for fathers going through these issues.
Over the years, I had grown a lot of resentment against my father, and that resentment turned to not only against my father, but against everyone else in my family and against the world. And in turn, it gave me a bad attitude against in my life perspective in general. And to the point that it was affecting my work, my health, and everybody around me.
There were some challenges for me thinking about talking about my story in front of other people, and particularly strangers. One of the interesting things for me was how quickly, as I said, we came together and just felt very comfortable with each other, and it became very easy to tell my story to them. And as a matter of fact, I get deeper and deeper, and one of the things I get out of this program is I actually start realizing more things about my story when I listen to other men's stories. So in coming into this group has been very powerful for me, and I'd really recommend it to anybody who's experienced any kind of domestic violence or abuse, that they look into this program.
The legal clinic has been a tremendous help. They are able to provide the insight that I need when I'm confused about a certain issue. And it also helps that it's a group setting in which I can observe other people's angles of dealing with a situation. And the lawyers are very, very knowledgeable, very friendly, and it feels like a casual setting. So it helps in relaxing us and opening up more.
I was really happy to find the Canadian Centre for Men and Families, and I was surprised and elated to learn that they provided services well beyond just counseling for men who have experienced violence in their relationships. There was also individual counseling. They have mental health programs. They look after fathers or have programs for fathers who are separated from their children, and there's financial and legal assistance as well.
I've had a lot of growth since coming here. There's a lot of things I would have handled differently had I known what I know now. Hearing about how other fathers in the groups have responded to their situations, it has provided me a lot of insight and very valuable information.
If I had not gotten help, I don't know where I would be today, honestly, and I'm forever in debt to you all at the Men's Center.
You want to volunteer?
Yes.
Anybody else want to volunteer? Okay,
All right.
That's terrific. We'll be talking with all of you.
There's a sign-up sheet at the back
Yeah.
for contact information, and if you want to volunteer, you can check it, put a check mark or say yes or something.
Yeah. Any other questions? Yes.
So for the Toronto Centre, have you had access to any provincial or federal funding in an ongoing way?
We've had access to some federal funding, but minimal. But what we have been able to do over the last year, and this is pretty unprecedented, is get access to foundation funding. So there are foundations that support programs, for example, that make families stronger. So we have argued the case for our Fathering After Separation program. The case is pretty simple. It makes families stronger if fathers are more involved in the lives of their children. So we were just given a grant to put that program on. Another foundation donated $23,000 for Toronto's first domestic abuse support group. So that's a foundation that does a lot of work in the community. So these are private foundations. The government's going to be a harder nut to crack, but it's something that we're working on. Yeah, Chris?
The legal help that you have, as well as the counseling help, is that volunteer based? Are they trained professionals volunteering, or do they have a stipend? Like, how do you work that?
There are a couple of cases where it's stipend payment, but in most cases these are professional volunteers.
Okay.
So the legal clinic, we have a team of lawyers. They're family law lawyers or criminal law lawyers. They have a private practice, but once a week they come in and do free services. Same goes with the therapy and the peer support and all the other programs.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, well, thanks again for listening. Thanks for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you do have questions, I'll be around. And again, if you can make a contribution in any amount, it is greatly appreciated. It will help us get the first Home for Men and Families opened in Ottawa.
Where do we put our money?
In the little envelope,
Yes.
and then you can hand it, into that bucket that Meg is kindly holding up. Good, thank you. Okay.
So a question for you. Those of you who signed up on the Eventbrite page, we got your email address, your contact information there. I'd like to assume that we can continue to let you know about upcoming events that we're going to be putting on, that we can use that information in that way. If there's anybody who doesn't want to be on that list, please just see me or one of the Ottawa volunteers and we'll make sure that your name doesn't get added. But otherwise, we'll go ahead and put that on, okay? And I want to say something that I thought I'd say at the beginning, but I forgot. And that is, you know, this protesting and the social controversy that's going on, it really is a very fundamental thing in our society. You know, it's essentially a war about meaning. What does it mean, for instance? If you criticize feminism, does it mean that you don't want equality for women? That's an important question about the meaning of something quite central, and clearly people fall on both sides of that. So these questions about meaning, it seems to me, are at the very heart of how we live our lives. They're very profound and they're very intimate, both for us in our personal lives. If we get these questions wrong, our lives don't work as well. In fact, they can work very badly. And as a society, it's even bigger. If we get these questions about meaning wrong, we can go to some very dark places. And it shows, if we look at history, that that is what has happened at times. So, Cafe and others who are engaged in this, we're engaged in an important, very fundamental battle. These are serious issues. And my intention and my concern with this organization is that we fight well. That we do it dedicated to truth and dedicated to compassion for people. So that's my personal vision and why I do this job. I think it's that important. Okay, so let's start our Q&A about the movie. Any questions? If people want to come up, is it on? And I mentioned within a few minutes we'll have Cassie Jaye on the line. I'm told that unfortunately we'll be able to see her, but she won't be able to see us. She just gets audio. But I'll leave that till she comes on. Okay, any questions? She looks like she did a great job. Any questions about anything for us in Cafe Ottawa?
Yeah. The police standing guard out there, who's paying them? Cafe or the police or?
No, we're paying for one security guard who's been checking admission, doing admission control, but the police are provided by the city. I'm not sure exactly why we've got 4 officers on duty protecting us here today. It may be because we're in City Hall, I don't know.
Thank you. Well, my next question is for Casey. It's a very thorough movie, but she mentioned very briefly the problem of boys in education today. So, and that's a big issue. Mr. Brown, Dr. Brown, is that his name? He gives a talk about the problem of boys failing in school. You know, would Casey consider a movie about the problem of boys in education today? That's my question for her.
Well, yeah, she's not here yet, but I do know that she has asked for suggestions as to what her next movie might be about. So you can go to her Red Pill site and leave comments there. And I believe under any of her videos, she said leave comments there about what you'd like to see her work on next. So I've done that. My own preference would be to say, what is the vision? You know, one of the problems with identity politics is that in the 60s it took a wrong turn. Martin Luther King was about, he said, I have a dream. And if you haven't watched that speech, watch it, it's amazing. But his dream was that we would work together to solve the problems of racism. But after he was assassinated, we went to another place. And it became, identity politics became driven by grievance and accusation. And we've been stuck there for 50 years. So what is the dream? What is the vision of how we would do this work? That would be what I would love her to do. And my suggestion to her.
forgive me, but God is learning about people, and now people need to understand God. And everything that's happened is so that we can understand peace, unity, tranquility, justice, compassion, patience, chivalry, and gratitude. And when we understand all of those, then we'll get it straight.
That's the way to go.
Well, I hope you'll have more questions for Cassie. Okay, yes, here we go. Jean-Jacques?
Yeah, so we're looking at financing Cafe. Was there a deadline for the Ottawa Centre to open? Or are we looking at a particular time?
Yeah, let me tell you a little bit about our tentative plans. I mean, obviously, this is up in the air. It's a fundraising campaign. Don't know how fast it'll go.
Excuse me.
But we are hopeful to open a centre by the end of next year. Okay, so we're giving ourselves basically a year to get ready. There are various stages to that. And in the shorter term, I would say sometime in the spring, maybe in the winter sometime in 2017, we'd like to start offering some programs, some clinical services, some groups on probably a one-day-a-week basis on some space somewhere that we can get, maybe for free, maybe an office building that isn't being used at the weekend, maybe one, few rooms that we could use. Maybe just something that we can get relatively low rent. So if anybody knows of a situation like that where you think that there's some space that we could get one day a week, that we could do a great deal of trialing of our programs, please let me know.
Yeah, we're on a pretty funny connection here, so I'm going to shut my video off soon. We got Cassie, by the way.
Okay, we have Cassie.
Can you hear the background noise? Can you say something?
Cassie, can you hear me? This is David Shackleton.
Yes, you can. Here we go. I'm going to just plug you in to our sound system here. And could you switch that over to the projector?
Cassie, I'm sorry that you don't have video, just audio.
Oh, okay. And I just have to drag you over.
We're not hearing her yet.
Yeah, we will.
Okay.
Oh.
Yeah, there she is.
Cassie, David Shackleton here. I want to say something to you first, because I have been so incredibly impressed by your willingness to go into a project and change your mind, to be open to the truth, and when you saw it, to acknowledge it and to move yourself. I think that takes amazing courage, so well done.
It was definitely the most terrifying thing I've ever done in my life, showing that transformation in a film for you all to see.
Okay, so anybody who wants to ask a question, line up at the floor mic there, please, and go ahead.
Is there a way for me to see the audience?
Well, we could try.
Okay, we're going to work on that, but I can tell you we have about 70 people in the room. We've just
awesome.
We've just watched your movie, and we loved it.
Can you see?
Blurry figures.
It's just
I'm getting a little
my
echo.
computer webcam, I'm afraid.
Hi,
Thank you guys for coming. Oh my gosh, it looks like a fun event. See a lot of seats filled.
Yeah.
Hello.
Full house.
Awesome. I'm glad this event went on in spite of everything that happened, the controversy with the cancellation, and I'm Thank you guys at Cafe so much for pushing through the barriers up against this screening happening.
Okay, first question, go ahead.
Well, obviously, I'm eager to hear that this was a financial success, that you made money from making the film in order to fund your own lifestyle and maybe another movie. Was this movie profitable for the company or you that made it?
Thank you for that question. I would like to address that. No, I don't ever see making a profit from this film. Making a film and a documentary is very costly with the animators and sound designers and composers and the distributors and the lawyers, a lot of lawyers for this film. So, you know, for me, it was just a work of passion. It wasn't a profitable endeavor, but I'm so grateful to the Kickstarter backers who funded this film, because that's the only way that this film was made, from that successful Kickstarter. And it all went into the film itself, and also into our distribution strategy for getting the film online and all the video on demand platforms like Netflix, Hulu, iTunes, Amazon, which we're going to roll out in a couple months. So it will be widely available, and that's the most I could ask for.
Thank you.
Hi, Cassie. Thank you again for doing this film. And again, like David was saying, I was so impressed. I love it when people start doing a documentary and change their mind during it. Once they start getting more information and having the courage to stick by your guns, you know. And my question to you is, you know, having started as a feminist and fighting for fathers' rights, being constantly under attack by people who call themselves feminists and people fighting for equality, I'd like to know, like, I'd like to hear from you, like, some of the attacks that you must have gotten from people who you considered friends, people who you considered colleagues and such like that, and how did they react to this movie? Because I could only imagine they came after you.
Yes, well, the whole process has been 3.5 years in the making, and for 2.5 years it was a private project I was working on. I wasn't public, but I was doing this film except with my friends and family. And I started to notice that I was put down, and the topic of the film was put down when I was trying to talk about making this film, and I was starting to see probably what a lot of men's rights activists have been going through, this dismissive writing off these issues as they're not as important as women's issues or women's rights. And when I would talk to feminists, when I would say I'm making a film about the men's rights movement, oftentimes they would say, what men's rights? What rights are they being denied? So it got me thinking, if this is the movement for gender equality and they couldn't say anything about what men's rights issues there are, then I was thinking, okay, there's a big gap missing in this gender equality movement, which is adding men to the discussion. And a lot of the reason why I dropped the label of feminist was when I started putting the magnifying glass on my own sexist views of men, where I really did have a wall up when I was hearing about male victims of domestic violence or sexual abuse, and I was making excuses and kind of victim blaming myself for these men who were victimized. And I realized that if the genders were reversed, I wouldn't have done that to a female victim of domestic violence, but I was questioning male victims. And so then I started to see my own bias, and when I recognized that, then I wanted to remove that bias and truly be looking at the genders equally and with the equal compassion. And then I started seeing that dismissive behavior with my friends and family and feminists. And still I have some family members that refuse to see the film. It's screened in our town. But then I have had family members and friends who have gone to see the film and said, oh, finally, I realized what you were working on the past 3.5 years. It's much more nuanced than the way the mainstream media portrays the men's rights movement or men's issues. So that's kind of a long-winded answer for you.
Well, thank you very much for your answer, and thanks again for the movie. And thanks again for changing. That's so wonderful.
Thank you.
Hi, Cassie. I'm going to be a little bit of a hog, and I'm going to ask two questions. One, a lot of people in the room know that I still label myself as a feminist, even though I am the co-director of the Montreal chapter of CAFE. I was wondering if you found a label that felt comfortable to you, other than feminist. That's my first question.
Great question. Thank you so much for asking that. Currently, I'm trying out being labelless.
Okay.
It was such a long journey going through this process, ideologically speaking, just the kind of inner turmoil I went through, that I'm not very quick to jump on a new label, because I think I did that previously without knowing the whole story. So I don't have a new label. I don't consider myself a men's rights activist. I'm a filmmaker that made a film about the men's rights movement. But I've thought egalitarian, equalist, humanist. But I don't feel comfortable accepting a new label right now, just because it's so fresh for me coming out of the feminist label. I just want to really look at all issues individually and have discussions around those topics without having a kind of over umbrella saying I'm this label and I'm against anything else, or I don't know. Yeah, so that's I don't have a new label yet, but I'm only 30, so I have time to figure out where I stand.
The other question I have is, because Montreal, we have very particular issues regarding language and regarding, there's a lot of unilingual French, unilingual English, lots of bilingual people. I was wondering how open you were to having subtitles put in your movie and working with people to do that, so your message can reach more people, but so that we can also reach more people at the same time.
Yes, we have two subtitled versions of the film so far in German and Hebrew, and we're working with a distributor right now who's going to get the film in all languages so that we can have a worldwide online release. So that is in the works, and we'll get French in there too. But yes, thank you for that question.
So if I contact you on your website, maybe we can make arrangements to get a French subtitled one?
Yes, that would be wonderful.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
That was my question.
Hi, Cassie. I first want to say I very much enjoyed your movie. It was a tearjerker in some spots. It hit very close to home. And I appreciate the time and effort you put into making this. Thank you. My question is, it's kind of difficult to go ahead and say, but about your journey, it's a specific question about that. When you were going through the transition in learning, did you have the emotional reaction? At first, was it negative or was it frustration? Did you deal with that, any negative aspects, any negative emotions while you were receiving all this new information? And the reason why I ask is because I find my experience with people who protest events like this have an anger, and they are met with certain arguments if they interact with people of CAFE or men's rights. And I'm wondering if it's more like we're only we halfway kind of got to them, but they're still dealing with the negative emotions associated with the new information.
By the way, the audio was a little bit cut in, cut out, but I think I got what you asked. So when I started making this film, and I had already been a feminist of about 10 years, and I did have a lot of anger in me when I found out about the men's rights movement and A Voice for Men and was reading their articles, and a lot of their language is very crude and they use a lot of swear words, and it just completely put me off. But I think where the anger is coming from with feminists looking at men's issues is a lot of people truly believe that the men's rights movement is breeding misogyny, and it's, if you think of the wife beater men who do go from woman to woman, just beating to a pulp or even to the point of death, and
Yes.
and then think of those men all bunched in together and created a movement called the men's rights movement. That's what my mindset was, that this is who these people are, and so that's the kind of rage it boils up inside of you, that it could be so large and have so many followers online, and so I think the anger and the rage and the inability to really communicate together and have these discussions is based on that misinformation that the men's rights movement is a hate group or is breeding misogyny. What I found is that the men's rights movement really is about gender equality, and even going further in the gender equality discussion than feminism has been, because they're adding men to the discussion. But they are the people that I've met who are considered the leaders of the men's rights movement. They agree with women having equal rights, and they want that, and they see that as actually freeing to the male gender role if women are also able to contribute to the income. And so I think the misinformation that's spread by mainstream media, that's really where it stems from, is why there's such a divide, and why the men's rights movement is so villainized. And so I had a lot of those reactions going into these interviews, and also so I filmed for a year, and then I was in post-production for 2.5 years. And the year I was filming, although I was recording 100 hours of footage with all these interviews, I remember sitting in the chair, sitting across from Warren Farrell or Harry Crouch or Aaron Pizzey, and I was waiting for them to say something I would be offended by, rather than hearing what they were saying. And I don't mean that to be a joke, but I mean, it was true. So I think people who are like me 4 years ago, if they can stop having that kind of approach to these conversations, stop looking for ways to be offended or ways to find out you're different from the person you're sitting across from, and really hear their story and hopefully have compassion for their situation, then I think that will lead to better relations between men and women in general.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Hi, Cassie. I have to ask about Big Red. She was the one, just to remind people, she's the one who called the guy fuckface, pardon my language, but was she capable, I would imagine you probably sat down with her for an hour or more to talk, was she capable of more nuanced opinion-making or opinions than what was shown in the film?
And I like to support everyone I interview, because they're all people that agreed to be in this film, so I'm eternally grateful for that. But I actually believe how the rest included at Pill was very kind compared to all the footage I had. I don't know if I've thought of releasing all the raw footage eventually online so people can see all the interviews in context and not edit it away. And there's a lot of content there. And but yeah, I don't know if there's much more nuance than what you saw in the film.
Yeah, I would buy a Big Red video if you were to sell that.
Very diplomatically stated, Cassie. I have a question. It's David here. I watched an interview that you did with Alison. What's her last name? I think Tiemann, that's right. And at one point she asked you a question about what do you think it is that stops women, that gets in the way when they consider men's issues. And you sort of struggled with that a bit. And I wonder, if you've gone any further at this point in terms of, apart from just the change of the worldview, which is always difficult, but is there anything specifically? I think you speculated that it might have something to do with guilt or something. I don't remember exactly, but I was fascinated by that particular question.
It was a little mumbled in the audio here for me. Can you rephrase the question?
Yes. What do you think it is that is especially difficult for women hearing about men's issues when they are, believe that they're attached to or seeking equality, but in fact they're just focused on women's issues mainly. What is it that makes that so difficult for women?
Oh, great question. I do think it is patriarchy theory, and that is a really big factor that makes it so that men's rights activists and feminists can't quite shake hands and say, you know, truce, let's be on the same team, because they do disagree on that. And if you believe that all men have oppressed all women throughout history, then there is a bit of I don't know if it's revenge, but it's like as a feminist mindset, you don't want to, if men start talking about their issues and that's being funded and that they have safe spaces for men to talk about issues, then that's the idea that it could go back to the 1800s idea of patriarchy. And so I think that's the fear and the wall up of having this discussion, because if feminists believe that men are the privileged gender, then giving them even more time to address their issues or time to voice ways that they are victims is threatening to the feminist mindset. That are we going to get women back in the kitchen barefoot and pregnant and not rising up the corporate ladder, breaking the glass ceiling? So there is this fear of start to organize and have their own movement, then it could be this, well, like Catherine Spiller from Ms. Magazine calls the backlash. But so if there's any way to take back or take the patriarchy theory off the table so we can just talk about current day, here and now. That's one thing that I really had a tough time with while making this film, was you could debate today's gender issues, but when you start talking about historically speaking, it can be twisted and manipulated in so many different ways to prove whatever point you're trying to make. And you know, that is the issue with history. It's you know, written by people or shared, those stories are shared by people or interpreted in different ways. But I think it's better and more productive to just focus on here and now, what's happening, what areas under the law are men being disadvantaged, like in fraternity fraud cases and a lot of the different fathers' rights issues, domestic violence, circumcision, and then see how we can move forward, rather than the oppression Olympics kind of thing, because I don't. And because this is a topic that I've tried to think of different analogies with the men's rights movement versus feminism throughout the years. Like, how can you explain that it's not a zero-sum game, that if you care about men's issues, it's not taking anything away from women? And I've tried to think of different bad analogies, like, well, it's caring about whales versus caring about dolphins, but that's not even the same either, because those aren't the only two mammals in the ocean. So it's there's nothing you can really compare the gender debate to, because they are two halves of our society, and so when you talk about one, the other feels left in the dust or feels attacked. And sorry to be a little bit somber here, but I don't know if there ever could be a gender equality movement that does embrace both, because I think even if you had a fundraising event, some kind of gala, I think both people who care more about men's issues or women's issues based on their own experience would be tallying up the minutes that's addressing women's issues versus men. And I think there's always going to be this clash of, like, who's getting more time, who's getting more funding. So in that way, I do see a men's rights movement as a possible solution to the imbalance in the gender discussion, because there's so much funding and vocal and cultural support for women's issues. And so I don't know how I got down that road, but thanks for your question.
Hi, Jean-Jacques here. That was an incredible answer, by the way. You covered quite a bit of stuff. I thought that was very, very interesting. And my question is not as involved, I suppose. I'm just curious as to those two gentlemen who were professors in universities, I think. The two gentlemen who were college professors, I believe, that you interviewed. I'm just wondering if you've had any feedback from them or otherwise from anybody else that you've interviewed in the movie with regards to how they feel about after seeing the movie, if they saw it at all?
Are you talking about the feminist professors?
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Kimmel,
Yes.
for instance, yes.
So Dr. Michael Kimmel came to our New York premiere, world premiere, and it was in New York on October 7th this year. And we did a Q&A after the film, and I think we had about 8 people on stage, and Michael Kimmel, let me make sure. Yeah, he was the only feminist on the stage. And the others were either men's rights activists or somewhere in the middle. So what he said about the film after watching it, the positive things he said was, he pointed to the screen and said, I don't see anything in this film that's not in the ERA, that all people should be treated equally under the law. So I take that as, like, he supported what the film said, because he wants the ERA to be passed. And then he also said, what I would like to see is this film screen alongside another film about boys' issues called The Mess You Live In. And the audience kind of erupted saying that's a feminist take on boys' issues. If you've seen The Mess You Live In, it's by the same filmmaker that made Misrepresentation, and she is a feminist, and the film is very much the feminist perspective on the boy crisis. But I took it that Michael Kimmel's reaction to how the film was created was he stayed through the whole thing and he participated in the Q&A, so I think he supported how I made the film. But obviously he really disagreed with the men's rights perspective and platform, and he got into a heated debate with Karen Strawn and Paul Elam on the stage. And we have a video of that Q&A that I'll be posting very soon, so please look for that online. And then the other feminists, Catherine Spiller from Ms. Magazine and Michael Mesner from the University of California, I don't believe they've seen the film. So, you know, it's up to them to find a screening, and I haven't heard that they've been to any screenings. And my friend Dara DeJour, who was pregnant in the film, and she was my feminist journalist friend, she went on her own kind of red pill journey while making this film, because I interviewed her very early on. And so we had, I don't know, a 2-hour long interview. Just most of it was about our misconceptions about the men's rights movement, or what are men's issues and are they valid. And since our interview back in, it must have been June 2013, she's really opened her eyes to men's issues, and she still keeps the label of feminist. And I believe it's that she wants to work within feminism to try to make it more gender inclusive for men, which there are a lot of feminists like Christina Hoff Sommers and Camille Paglia who keep the feminist label to try to work within the movement to create change. But, you know, obviously I dropped the label and chose a different path.
Okay, thanks a lot. By the way, I'll be working on the French stuff as well, so just so you know. And I can't wait to see you up here in Ottawa.
Thank you.
This should be a pretty quick one, I think. So I'm a member of CAFE in Ottawa, and my experience with trying to engage with maybe gender studies professors at university or this sort of thing, because we often try to get them to come to our events and speak. Sorry, I'll speak a little bit louder. But yeah, my experience is actually that there's a great deal of resistance getting them to come out and speak at our events. This sort of no platforming tactic, I guess you would say. And I'm just wondering what your experience was with trying to get people in that camp to engage with you on this film. Because we've had a lot of challenges with just engaging and trying to get people involved with what we're doing. And I'm just wondering how that took shape for you.
I missed a little bit of the opening. Are you asking, trying to get feminist perspectives involved in this discussion?
Yeah, how was your experience with getting them on board with just even discussing this?
I don't think it's an easy thing to accomplish. I know at the Toronto screening a couple days ago, there was supposed to be a feminist on the panel, and she backed out at the last minute. And while I was making the red pill, I did have a very prominent feminist author who's written about the importance of men being included in the feminist movement. She backed out the night before our interview with her, and we traveled to go see her, so that was a big disappointment. So I don't know if it's, I think that feminist author with the film, she was worried about being included in a film with men's rights activists, that she was saying she was worried about getting doxxed and getting hate emails or something like that. So that was her reasoning, but sometimes I do wonder if maybe they're not engaging in debates or discussions because they don't know enough about the men's rights movement. And I have also a little tidbit of information. I was in contact with Gloria Steinem while I was filming, and I asked if she would be willing to be interviewed. She was being interviewed in a lot of other documentaries at the time, like Equal Means Equal. And so she said she had to decline being interviewed by me because she didn't know enough about the men's rights movement. She then recommended me to Dr. Michael Kimmel, and so that's how I found him and included him in the film. She said he was the best person to go to discuss the men's rights movement, which, you know, I also found that he didn't know a lot about the men's rights movement either and hasn't sat with them in person and debated. So there is this, knowledge gap of information or a lot of misinformation about the men's rights movement, but a lot of feminists that just don't know what their platform is, and so maybe they feel uncomfortable to debate or have a discussion. So hopefully this film will get everyone up to speed with some of the issues. I know the film doesn't cover all the issues. We could have done more. We could have had a larger section about suicide and boys in school and false accusations. So many issues that I didn't have enough time to cover in this film, but I think it's a good kind of course 101 to hopefully get feminists up to speed with some of the men's issues, and then we can have a discussion from there.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cassie, so much. I have a question. I don't want to put you on the spot. No is an okay answer. But we have scheduled a second session, a screening session of the Red Pill immediately after this one. It's going to start at 7 o'clock. Would you be, that's I guess 4 your time. Would you be available for another half-hour chat in the Q&A session after that one? It would be at, let me think, 9:30.
Local time.
That's 6:30 your time. Would that work?
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. And I think we need to end this pretty soon, so we'll move on. Thanks.
Just know it was a full house. It was a full house. It was sold out.
Yeah.
We're going to wrap up quickly because then we've got our next
next
screening about to start. But one more round of applause for Cassie. Thank you. Take a well-deserved break. I want to just do a quick round of thank yous. Thank you to David and the Ottawa team. If you're part of the Ottawa team, please put your hand up. Everybody.
Yay!
I want to thank Hal Groback for his generosity and for making I want to remind you very quickly that CAFE is the only registered Canadian charity really focused on the only registered, thank you Victor, Canadian charity focused on men's issues. We've been, over the last few years, I think doing some very unique and unprecedented work. And I want to remind you that for the next 4 weeks, any donation that you make up until that $25,000 mark will be matched dollar for dollar by Mr. Roback. So please put whatever you can in that envelope or donate online, and then the envelopes can go in the bucket. Is the bucket still on the chair?
Yeah.
It's on the chair? Okay, fabulous.
Don't forget merchandise.
There's merchandise over there, t-shirts, mugs, books, all sorts of things.
Great Christmas gifts!
They do indeed. And together we will make a positive difference in the lives of men and their families, and we'll respond to some of the negative and challenges that we've had from some of our critics with something positive. We will show what men's rights activists and men's issues enthusiasts are really all about. So please help us make this a reality. Thanks, everybody. See you next time. Our own events, Canadian Association for Equality Ottawa branch events, the University of Ottawa. There was Janice Fiamengo, one of our executive team members and advisors, and also a professor at the University of Ottawa. She was featured in the film. I hail from Toronto. We're very active at the University of Toronto. There were a number of clips, many clips actually, from events from U of T cafe events, including Big Red, who you might have caught in a couple of spots in the film. Well, she's from U of T. She's from some of the events that we hosted there. So there's a lot of Canadian footage, a lot of Canadian Association for Equality event footage in this film. And this event tonight is actually brought to you by the Cafe Ottawa chapter. So first I'd like to ask a round of applause for David Shackleton and his team here in Ottawa. As you were taking your seats earlier, you might have found brochures for Cafe, as well as brochures for our Canadian Centre for Men and Families on your seat. The Centre for Men and Families that brochure refers to is the one in Toronto. It is the only one in Canada, but we want to change that. And to do that, another thing you may have found on your seat is a little envelope. Do you guys get those little envelopes? If you didn't get an envelope, maybe our volunteer Meg will be able to pass one out to you. And those envelopes are for a major capital campaign that we're launching today, right now in fact. And this has been kicked off by a very generous donor who was actually with us earlier for our first screening, a Torontonian named Hal Roback, who has launched us on a capital campaign by pledging to donate $25,000 so that we can get a home for men and families open in Ottawa, the Ottawa Centre for Men and Families. What he's going to do is he's going to match every donation that comes in up until the end of the year, up until $25,000. When we screened the Red Pill Friday night, just a couple of nights ago in Toronto, I made the pitch that I'm about to make to you, to the Toronto crowd, and we were able to raise $2,500 that one night from the folks that attended that event. Those were Torontonians that are generous enough to donate to an Ottawa Men's Centre, so I'm hoping that the Ottawa community here will match them or exceed them in your level of generosity. So what we're asking you to do tonight is to consider becoming a member of Cafe, which is $60. And what I said earlier is still true. If everybody at all of the screenings we've been doing across Canada, and this is screening number 5, there will be at least 1 or 2 more, were to become a member of Cafe, we would have the funds we need to match that $25,000 and open Ottawa's first home for men and families. If you could play the slideshow, Victor, that would be great. Thank you. So let me just very quickly kind of make a case for why I think we need a men's center here in Ottawa. Those of you who are aware of why you're sitting here in this very nice venue in Ottawa City Hall, but not in the Mayfair Theatre, might know that we've had some challenges trying to organize events here in Ottawa. They're not unlike the challenges that we've had in Toronto organizing events at U of T and in other places, as you've seen in the film. You guys are all somewhat aware of some of these controversies, right? It's difficult to advocate for awareness on men's issues in Ottawa. And there's no place where men can go to get services for mental health, legal services, fathering services, things like that. So we believe that it's time to build a home where men and families can go here in Canada's capital. We've already raised $5,500 towards the match, towards the $25,000 match, so we're off to a very good start. But I'm asking each of you to please contribute what you can so that we can have a home here in your community. What you're seeing are some slides, at least the ones that actually display, from the Canadian Centre for Men and Families back in Toronto. So what we do there, and I'll take up just 1 more minute of your time, we do programs like mental health support to try to reduce the high rates of male suicide. We do counseling, we do peer support programs. We have a legal clinic so that men who are fighting to maintain a relationship with their children after family breakup can access family law services. We also provide other kinds of legal supports. We have Toronto's only support group for male victims of domestic abuse, which is getting a lot of clients, which I guess is unfortunate, but at least they now have access to that program. We have something called the Fathering After Separation or Divorce program. These are all unprecedented services that you won't find anywhere else, including none in Ottawa. So this is what we want to bring here. We also want to do advocacy work. We're in the capital, so it makes sense that we have an advocacy training center here, which David Shackleton has an exemplary background to lead. So I'm really hoping that we can have a presence here both to provide services in the community and also to do advocacy at the national level. I'll give you one example of what that advocacy looks like. You might have heard of the National Inquiry into Murdered and Missing Indigenous Women. We believe that men should be included in that inquiry. Anybody here agree that boys and men also should be included in the National Inquiry? They do make up 2/3 of the murdered Indigenous population. So in this very room on Wednesday night, in just a few days, we're going to have a major event where we're going to be bringing in Chief Ernie Cray from BC, an Indigenous leader from British Columbia, as well as Professor Adam Jones from UBC, who has a petition to make this inquiry gender inclusive. They will be here along with other folks, so I encourage you to come out this very room on Wednesday night at 7 o'clock. That's the kind of national advocacy work we intend to do with the Ottawa Centre for Men and Families. So at this time, I'm going to ask Victor to play a short 4-minute video. If you have to go, please do consider making that contribution. You can do that through cash or credit card or check. You can put it in the envelope and then put the envelope in the bucket, which Meg is kindly holding up behind you there. Or you can also donate online if you're more comfortable doing that. But please consider making a contribution in whatever amount you can afford or becoming a member at the $60 level. This month only it will be matched by Hal Roback. Let's go ahead and show some clips from the centre in Toronto.
Suicidal thought.
Do you think a centre like that would have a place in Ottawa? You think that would do some good in the community? How about putting up billboard ads like we did in Toronto, that half of domestic violence victims are men, but no shelters or services are dedicated to men? Would that look good in Ottawa as well? You think the federal politicians should see those billboard ads? So at CAFE, we are committed to making all of that happen in Ottawa. And when we did it in Toronto, it was a game changer. We don't get protests anymore. It's changed public attitudes in the community towards men and men's issues. Now we work in partnership with the police, with victim service agencies, with family service agencies, with homeless shelters. They actually send us clients on a daily basis for all the various programs you just heard about. And they work in partnership to do anti-abuse conferences and other major events. So it could be a game changer here in the capital. Why shouldn't it be? It belongs here in Ottawa, home for men and families. So I'm going to ask you one more time, and I promise one more time only, to please make a contribution, become a member of CAFE, $60, or make any kind of donation that you can, here tonight or online. If you choose to do it tonight, just put whatever you can in the envelope. It will be matched dollar for dollar. So now is the best time to get on board and support what we're trying to do. We are the only registered charity in Canada dedicated to men's issues and dedicated to building a home for men and families in Ottawa, Toronto, and all across Canada. Now, before we go to the Q&A and to Cassie, who is, I think, joining us again, right?
Yes.
Fabulous. Okay, great. So we've got a few minutes. Are there any questions about what we're trying to do, what CAFE's trying to do in Ottawa, and in particular, the Ottawa Centre for Men and Families Initiative? Any questions about that? Yes, sir.
What specific programs do you have in mind specifically about male suicidality and particularly sexual abuse, as in like rape of men?
Well, we do a wide variety of programs that relate to trauma. So I can use the example in Toronto, and maybe David, if you want to comment on what you think might be the same or different here in Ottawa. But in Toronto, we have a whole package of services for male survivors of trauma. We do individual trauma-informed counseling. We do a peer support program. I mentioned the one that focuses on domestic abuse, the only one of its kind in Toronto and, in fact, all across Ontario. We also provide access to shelters if men are in emergency need of support. And to low-income men, we can get you a lawyer. This is actually kind of groundbreaking. So Legal Aid Ontario, some of you might have heard of this agency. They have a special program to provide emergency access to lawyers for women who have been put at risk because of domestic abuse. It's a program that theoretically is open to anybody, but it's only been made available through women's shelters and women's organizations. CAFE is the first to be accredited to provide this kind of legal support to male victims of any form of abuse and trauma. So legal services, access to shelters, access to counseling and peer support. Those are the package of services that we provide. And specifically on childhood sex abuse, we work very closely with a number of therapists in Toronto that have really pioneered this particular area of counseling. The group you want to look at is malesurvivor.org. They have a great website with a number of really qualified counselors all across Canada. Did you want to add to that?
I do want to say that we will be responding to the needs that are expressed by the community in Ottawa. And so, you know, the program mix will be what reflects what's being asked for. And that's another reason why you should keep in touch. As we go ahead, we'll be looking to CAFE members to help guide this project, to make sure that it meets the needs that are there. So join up and help us make this happen.
Okay. Other questions? Sure. Are there any other questions? No? Yeah, sure.
When you say that that advertisement says that there is an equal amount of violence of women against men, I think you're going to be stretching it in terms of most people's perception, saying that it is equal rather than acknowledging that it might be approximately the same. I think it may be a stretch. I realize that most people most guys are not going to admit to anything, generally, unless they're in a sympathetic environment or whatever. But I think that's pushing the edge, using that ad.
Thank you for your comment. I mean, it's a fair point. We debate a lot internally about what messaging we want to use, but on that particular ad, we decided, let's just state the facts. The fact is, half of domestic violence victims are men, and there's Statistics Canada data. They do these family, it's called the family violence portrait every 10 years, and every 10 years it showed the same thing, half and half. Actually, in 2014, it was slightly more male victims, but still roughly half-half. And then the second part of the ad that has gotten fewer hits or less attention is that there's 0 shelters for men. That's also just as important, that there's hundreds of thousands of victims, whether it's 50% or 40%, it's hundreds of thousands of victims and essentially no services. And if you look at our website, equalitycanada.com/violence against men, which is the campaign page for that particular ad, you will see all of the sources there. One of the most shocking things is the rates at which men actually go to the police and report the violence. Not only are they just as likely to experience violence, they're actually just as likely to report it, which sounds pretty shocking. But when you look at the police data is not consistent with that. There's only one way to interpret that, is that police do not actually take male violence victims seriously. And we know from the hundreds of clients that have passed through the center in Toronto, they tell the same story. They call the police for help, they find themselves arrested. Doesn't matter if they've got bruises, they're bleeding, they've got witnesses, they've got all the evidence. This happens again and again and again. You know what? We're tired of that. So we're going to build a home in Ottawa for men and families. We're going to do advocacy, we're going to do billboard ads and other kinds of outreach, we're going to do services, and we're going to work in partnership, collaboratively with other agencies, again, just as we've done in Toronto, to solve this problem one family at a time, and to also make progress on those intractable public policy issues that we also need to tackle. But in terms of the messaging, you should get involved and you should help advise us on that, because we're always looking for more feedback.
Well, I think it's great, the messaging. Recently the Metro had this big long week thing about sexual assault that happens on university campuses.
Yeah.
I was a victim of sexual assault when I was 18 years old. I was gang raped by a bunch of older guys. When I went to the hospital and talked about it, basically the doctor laughed at me, told me I should come out of the closet. Wow. That's the kind, So I didn't report it, There was a lot of stuff, and I was so ashamed of it for years and years. It wasn't until recently, till about 2 years ago, in Vancouver. I was at a group setting where there was a bunch of other men, and I actually managed to get down to it. And I was so very uncomfortable at first, but I have actually managed to help a couple of other guys who have been, who were victims of rape, and it's such an inequality of it's all like this, and guys like me, their stories just never come out. And a lot of it is because we're ashamed.
Yeah.
And we're just too saying because what's going to happen? I say it, and how's everybody going to look at me afterwards, right? And it's a shame. So I think a billboard out there getting the message out. It sickens me to see the Stop Violence Against Women. So how about just stop violence?
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be.
Well, thank you for sharing, and I'm so sorry that you had that experience. Yeah, reducing barriers, reducing stigma, so men are more likely to speak up. And one way to do that is to have courageous men like yourself willing to share those stories. We do quite a bit of that. We have men, well, you saw it in the video actually, talking about domestic abuse, talking about what it's like to, be a primary parent for years, and then almost overnight you lose your relationship with your child. I mean, that's a tragedy, not just for you, but for your children. So men talk about those stories and they heal through the programs we offer, but then they keep talking about their healing experiences, and it's really motivational, gets other men to come forward. It's quite a remarkable thing. I've been so moved by some of the stories we've heard and how courageous men are to heal and then to help other men to heal. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, we still have a few more minutes, I think, until Cassie's joining us. Oh, okay. Are there maybe one last question, and then we'll go to Cassie?
I just messaged her to say that there's a good discussion. Could be a bit long.
Well, I know you're itching to talk to Cassie, I get that.
Great. So she's ready, but she's happy to wait.
Okay, if there's one more question, and then we can, without further ado, we can go to Cassie. No? You just want to talk to Cassie? Okay, one last question.
Okay, we're always going on, like you just said, when we have, you have a billboard in Toronto about male victims of abuse, but like you said with Erin Vizzy, she also said that, because I'm familiar with her work, maybe she didn't say it here, but so I can't remember if I'm taking it from here or somewhere else. She always says that women abuse the children just as much as the men do. So here we have, like, there's an option here for like a two-pronged attack, because if a woman's attacking a guy who's 3 times her size and strength, and well, what's she gonna do with a kid that's 1/3 her size and strength, right? That's like, I know, like, we already have somebody here saying, oh man, they're not gonna report it or something like that, but like, what's a kid gonna do against someone who's that much bigger than they are?
It's a really good point, and you're referring to a major issue that we bring up with respect to the gender binary approach to domestic abuse, which is that if you see everything as male perpetrator, female victim, you're forgetting that these are families that have children, and if you take if you leave a child with a violent woman because you're kind of fixated on getting the man out of the house, even if he's the victim, you might also be the one protecting that child, right? And so, but imagine it from the father's point of view, that catch-22. If I report this, there's a good chance that I'm now being removed from the house. If I don't report it, I and my child continue to be subjected to violence. It's an impossible situation. Fathers should not have to be in those situations, and that's what we want to do something about that. But it's also why we call it the Canadian Centre for Men and Families, and here the Ottawa Centre for Men and Families. It's not just about the man or the fathers, it's also about the children, the families, and the larger community and society. So we're engaging in a collaborative, positive project to make our families stronger and our communities healthier. We really believe that, and I hope that you'll get on board and that you'll make a contribution. Financial contribution would be very nice, volunteering would also be great. And I think with that, we will go to Cassie. Thank you for your attention today.
Just while we're waiting, somebody dropped a bracelet.
Oh.
If that's yours, you can come up and get it.
Hi.
Hello?
Cassie, you're on.
Can you hear us?
Hi. Hello, I see you now.
Okay. Well, Cassie, your movie is absolutely a hit with us. So,
Where is Cassie? Where is she? Dave.
She's in. Where are you, Cassie?
Where are you? California?
Where are you, Cassie?
Oh, my audio is a little crackly, but I'm in California in the San Francisco Bay Area.
So we have a floor mic. If you have a question for Cassie or for Cafe, just step up, please. Hey guys, come on. Okay. Go ahead.
Okay, hi, thanks, brilliant movie, loved it, thank you. One thing, I was actually at that Janice Fiamengo presentation at Ottawa U. Can you hear me?
It's a little muffled. You're at a presentation at U of T, is that right?
At Ottawa U, the one that's in your film, the one that you showed in your film with Janice Fiamengo.
Oh, I think I'm losing video.
So, I don't do sign.
Can you see us?
If you guys want to shut off your video and just leave your audio, maybe that would help the bandwidth.
It does usually. Is that better?
Yeah, let's try that.
Okay, I was at the Ottawa U presentation that night that you had in your film with
I
Janice
lost you.
Fiamengo.
Hello?
Hello.
Can you hear me, Cassie?
No,
Yeah.
let's see. I wonder if maybe you could type out the questions. If you can hear me okay, maybe I could just respond.
Okay.
Unplug your sound and put it back in.
So, who's the best stenographer here?
Okay. Well, Victor can do that for you if you can make it short.
Yeah, I will try and point formulas. At the Janice Fiamengo presentation at Ottawa U, which is in your film, I was actually at that presentation, and the disruptors were, among other things, singing the Internationale, which of course is the famous global communist song. It seems that in every case, all of the disruptors in your film were in fact motivated.
Top right corner. for chatting. It's the one that has the message bubble. Where? It's over at
Yeah, you have to click the little message, the little word balloon, and that's it. You click there, you type in there.
Okay.
So, you know, I could try this from home. What do you think? I have like a...
Give us your question in 12 words.
I'm wondering, it seems that the elephant in the room is Marxism, which has taken over feminist as well as most identity politics movements since the suffragettes. It seems like it was a large omission in the film that Marxism seems to be the motivation behind all of the disruptors that I saw.
I heard the last part of that about asking why Marxism was left out of the film. Is that the question?
Yes. Close.
I give up. Say yes.
Hello?
Sure.
We can see you fine, and we can hear you fine.
Okay, so I'll answer that question. It was brought up to me in my interview with Warren Farrell about his explanation how Marxism has affected the feminist movement and why that's an issue for men's issues being included. The reason I excluded it from the film was more of a calculated decision based on who I'm hoping the audience for this film will be, which is people who are where I was 4 years ago before I started making this film. And when Dr. Warren Farrell was explaining Marxism in regards to feminism to me back then, I checked out mentally. It went too far with challenging my feminist beliefs that it really put a wall up and turned me off to the discussion of just looking at men's issues individually. I absolutely agree with the person who asked this question that that is a huge discussion that should be included in gender politics. But I think it's a little further down the rabbit hole than the audience that I'm trying to reach with this film. And a lot of what I did with this film was trying to get people to ask questions themselves that would lead to greater understanding of men's issues and gender equality in general. Because I think when you get people to ask questions to themselves, they find the answer quicker and in a way that's more rooted in their future beliefs or understanding of these issues. If you can get them to ask the questions themselves and really process in their own mind with their own experiences and look into more research and studies to find answers, then I think that's better than people telling you what to believe, because then it does feel like you're, I don't know, being, I don't know, it just seems like there's a wall up when you're told what to think rather than ask the questions for yourself and find your own answers. So I don't know if that quite answers your question, but that's why I decided to exclude the Marxist discussion from the film.
Thank you, yes.
Okay, thank you. Are you getting the text? We've put your next question in the text box.
There's the next question in the box.
Oh, okay, hold on.
Oh, you heard that?
So, thanks you. Have you personally been affected by any men in your life who have suffered abuse? Oh, that's a good question. You know, I think a really big kind of aha moment and red pill moment for me was starting to talk about these issues to my stepfather, who really was my father figure growing up. He's been my stepfather since I was 4 years old. And his introduction into my family and being a part of my mom's life completely changed the course of our life. If I was continued to be a child of a single mother, I know it would have been really difficult, and him coming into a family of then 4 daughters, me and my sister and then my 2 stepsisters, a lot of estrogen in the house. He was a very courageous man and selfless, exhausted every day, long commutes, and never complained. And then when I started talking to him about the myth of male power, when I was reading that, and the success object concept that Warren Farrell talks about, I didn't go too much into that in this film. That's an area I wish I could have gone further into. But that pressure on men to provide for the family, and that you're, looked down upon if you can't live up to those standards, and then also, child support payments on top of that. He was paying a lot of money in child support, and also had. Is anyone recording this interview? I don't know if I want this online. Like, I really, I had no idea that this man I've known since I was 4 had been through all this, and he never complained about it until I started making this film and brought up these issues, and he'd say, oh yeah, I've been through that. Oh yeah, that too. Yeah, no. So I think that's true with a lot of men that have gone through these things, and they just don't talk about it. So I hope this film, inspires a space for people to have these discussions without feeling like they're whiners or weak or something like that.
I just sent you another question.
Okay. Do you have any advice on how to do advocacy for men effectively? To go with something that's very recent in my mind, I was just listening to the theater owner who decided to put the film for the Ottawa screening, and in an interview he did for iHeartRadio with, I think it was called CFR, it was some kind of radio show on iHeartRadio over there. And it was disappointing to see how Cafe is one of the most balanced gender equality groups that I've come across in my 3.5 years of making this film, and I'm so impressed with the work that Cafe does. And then to hear this interview with the theater owner and other people online saying that Cafe is misogynistic or XYZ, promotes violence against women, it couldn't be further from the truth. And that's what's so upsetting to me, is that these labels are thrown around to brand people, like put a sticker, hello, my name is a misogynist, on their chest, and so that other people will write them off and instantly think they're something they're not. So I really want to see this throwing around labels tactic to be called out and stopped, because it diminishes when people are actually racist or misogynistic or promoting violence against women. You can't just throw around that label to people who are advocating for gender equality like Cafe is. So as far as the question, do you have any advice on how to do advocacy for men more effectively? I think we just need to, sometimes it's really hard to be calm and balanced when there's so much hate-filled lies thrown at you that you feel like you need to react, and because it just hurts so much that then it starts to boil up inside of you, and then you could come off like you're aggressive, but you're just trying to defend yourself or your point of view. I think we really need to just try to, you know, remain calm and know that back when I was a feminist before making this film, the reason I had so much anger and walls up to listening about men's issues was I really did believe that the men's movement was like all the wife beaters in the U.S., because where I live in the U.S., getting together, plotting ways to beat more women. That's really what I thought it was. So that's where that anger and rage and dismissiveness came from, was the lies that was in my own head about the men's rights movement. So we shouldn't, I hope we can be understanding of people who have that anger inside of them that they just don't know, they haven't done their research. And even when I started making the Red Pill, I told a lot of my feminist friends and family I'm making a film about the men's rights movement, and oftentimes they would say, what men's rights? What rights are men being denied? And these are my, you know, feminist friends and colleagues. And for, you know, if feminism is the gender equality movement, the dominant gender equality movement, but they can't mention a single men's rights issue, that, you know, really showed that they haven't done their research into men's issues, and there's not really a platform for that discussion right now. So I'm thrilled to see organizations like CAFE starting that dialogue, and I just hope we don't get pulled from more cities and our events being censored, because this is, you know, I hope this film does bring everyone up to speed with the basic men's issues that are there, and there's even more that I couldn't cover in the film, but I think once people start to understand men's issues, then we can start having a discussion towards solutions.
Great, thanks. Next question.
Thank you for going down the rabbit hole for us. The people who need to watch this movie are outside calling us sexist. They are? How do we get people like Big Red to swallow the red pill? I'm so sorry that you're having to walk past that to just come see this film. It's really upsetting. So how do we get people to, like Big Red, to swallow the red pill? You know, I'd love to see more feminists call out the radicals, the moderate equalist feminists call out the radicals. You know, right now there's a lot of, I don't know, deflection going on from like the people who inspired the theater to cancel the event. Both parties are pointing to the other, saying, well, it's not our fault, it's theirs. So the feminist protesters were saying, we didn't cancel the film, look at the theater. And then the theater is saying, well, we were getting, you know, threats to our safety, or hearing, you know, whatever lies they were about the film or cafe. So no one's taking ownership of, you know, this censorship happening. But how can we get people to swallow the red pill? Okay, well, one silver lining at the light at the end of the tunnel that we can all look forward to is I'm currently working with the distributor to getting the film available on Netflix, Hulu, iTunes, Amazon, Vudu, all these other video on demand platforms online. And so the film will be widely available in a few months. I haven't announced the exact release date yet, but it's going to be available to anyone in their living room to just click through and accidentally come across the red pill and say, hey, what's this? And you know, I think if people don't read the misinformation in our negative film reviews online, and they just watch the film as a standalone viewing experience for 2 hours, I think that would be the best viewing experience, because they're not already being fed all this misinformation about men's rights or this film. So that is the silver lining, is that we will be widely available online soon. So anyone who's calling this film promoting violence against women or misogynistic, those lies will be put to rest in a few months.
Great. Have time for another question?
Sure.
Okay, here we go.
Our opponents accuse us of being losers that blame women for our personal problems. Do you think they are projecting? Do you think that the radical feminists also feel hatred towards men because of personal problems? Our opponents accuse us of being losers that blame women for our personal problems. You know, something about the gender discussion debate that I haven't been able to equate to any other debate out there. I mean, maybe liberal versus conservative, but not even that. I kept on trying to find an analogy of trying to show that if you stand up for the rights of one group, it's not a zero-sum game where you're taking away rights from another. So while I was filming, I was thinking, okay, well, if we stand up for, save the whales, are we then saying we don't care about dolphins? No, and that's not even a good analogy because those aren't the only two, sea creatures out there. But with gender, it's like there's these two halves of humanity. And so when we talk about women's issues, it can start to become, to have that feeling of dismissing men's issues or blaming them for women's issues. And then when we talk about men's issues, feminists or even, just mainstream people feel like women are being attacked or put down or like their issues don't matter as much. So there's this, it's difficult to talk about these issues without the other side feeling offended or dismissed or put down. Let's see, our opponents accuse us of being losers that blame women for our personal problems. I mean, this is not going to be very PC, but sometimes it's okay to blame women for an issue that affects a man. If it is a woman that's beating him or a female teacher that abused him sexually as a child, we also, this is something the honey badgers told me, is that we need to recognize when women do bad things. And, if we're truly about gender equality, then, we shouldn't give special rights that if a woman does a bad thing that we don't acknowledge that, hold everyone accountable equally. Do you think they're projecting? Do you think that the radical feminists also feel hatred towards men because of their personal problems? So many people that I've met over the years, even before making the red pill, when they're really involved in gender issues, it's because they went through something personally. So you're dealing with a sector of the population that is, I think, even has more in their past that is, one of those kind of wounds that can reopen quickly if, something triggers them, and I don't mean that word triggered in like a mocking way, but, if you were a woman that was sexually abused as a child and you see, a comedian talking about making a rape joke, then that's going to trigger you. And so there's this open wound that can easily be reopened throughout your life. And then men, with child custody or paternity fraud, or a man who lost his brother to suicide, or a boy had a botched circumcision, all these really emotional experiences that, if he's in a room where they're only talking about women's rights and how men have all the power, of course that guy is going to feel marginalized and put down, and like his life experience doesn't matter as much. So I think we just, recognize that a lot of us are, a lot of us are kind of wounded children at heart, and we are sensitive, and we also react to our difficult life experiences differently. Sometimes that's with crude language, and that's what a lot of what you see, on A Voice for Men. And the honey badger, Allison Tiemann, also told me that she, makes jokes about sexual assault to cope with her own experience. So we all have different coping mechanisms, and I think we just need to, be compassionate towards everyone and try to have a discussion without making it into slinging mud or pulling fire alarms on the other person's event that's happening. That was long-winded, sorry.
That was great. Here's another one.
How do you think the MRM can avoid a similar ideological trap which feminism has fallen into? That's a good question. That's something I really pondered on a lot during the filming process, because there were times when I thought, the men's rights movement is kind of doing the same things that feminists do, but in support of men's issues rather than women's rights. Not all the time, but definitely sometimes I was thinking that. And I do agree with Harry Crouch in the film when he says if there's going to be this huge women's movement, then maybe we need a counterbalance and call it the men's movement or men's rights movement. And then he says, I hate to see either one. I think that's a really true statement for at least what I've been seeing, is that there does need to be some kind of counterbalance, because women's issues are the dominating discussion in the media and entertainment and also funding for these programs. So how do you fall in the same, how do you avoid falling into the same ideological trap? Well, gosh, one thing that I do hope people take away from this film is realizing that men's rights activists that criticize feminism are not criticizing women or hating on women, but they're criticizing.
Come back.
Come back. Question that crashed the internet.
I don't know what to do.
No. We lost it. Oh, they're working on it. I wonder.
Okay, while Victor's working on that, let me just say a little bit more. So this is what Cafe is about, what you've experienced this evening. We want to have dialogue that is open and honest and unconstrained and involves everybody who wants to be part of it. That's our business. There's been such an interest in this movie, we were turning people away at the door at both sessions. And so we're going to have another screening on the 2 weeks from today, what's that, the 18th, at the auditorium in the Central Library, so Metcalfe and Laurier, at 2 p.m., maybe 3 p.m. Anyway, so we're going to screen it again. Please let your friends know, and let everybody know who would be interested about that. We'd like to continue this conversation. Is Cassie back?
Hi. Can you see me, hear me?
Yep. Yeah, more minutes?
Yeah.
Oh, yay.
Can I ask you one?
Rambling on and if it's interesting
Can you hear me, Cassie? Can you hear me?
Oh, yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, okay. I'd like to know how your journey with the red pill has affected your personal relationships.
Oh, good question. That was the biggest impact this film had on me, was how my relationship with my boyfriend of 5.5 years has evolved and changed for the better. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Let's see, how do I describe it? So we've been together 5.5 years, and I have been in the process of making the film for 3.5 years. So there were 2 years there where I was a staunch feminist and of many years, and in hindsight, now I can see a little bit more clearly how that affected my relationship. But I was very quick to complain about doing housework and also working in the day and then coming home and cooking and cleaning and doing whatever else. And those were the most common arguments that we had. And in hindsight, it feels extremely trivial. But that's at least once a month that I would have a big kind of blow up that, why am I expected to do this? I work hard too. We both spend the same amount of hours at work, and then I have to do everything at home. And when I started making the red pill, a lot of my red pill moments were realizing all the privileges I had within my own relationship with my boyfriend, as well as how much my family has cared for me over the years, financially, just helping me. And so with my boyfriend, I started to realize, okay, yeah, I was doing the housework and cooking, but he was paying the vast majority of the bills because he was working a labor job and long hours, 11, 12-hour days, often out in the cold, getting there at 4 a.m. And so our pay discrepancy was, he was, sacrificing a lot of comfort to make the kind of income he did. And I found comfortable jobs, and I still worked long days and did the housework and cooking, but, I picked, jobs that I knew I would enjoy more than ones that would pay more, that were taxing on the body or the mind or anything. So once I started to realize that, then I realized I had a lot of privilege in my relationship, and saw all of my boyfriend's sacrifice, and also how much my stepfather had helped me throughout the years, and loved me like I was his own child, kind of thing. And so, yeah, basically after making the red pill, I was a lot more understanding of my boyfriend's contribution to the family. And that's something that there's a moment in the film when Michael Mesner, who's the gender studies professor at USC, I asked him why he thinks child custody is in favor of women more often. And his response was basically that women have, or wives have been involved in the child care and the housework more often than men, and so men weren't equally involved in the child rearing. So when it comes to divorce and family court, he says something like men want equality when they weren't equal in the marriage to begin with, or in raising their children to begin with. And I really struggled to include my voiceover after he says that, because I have a really strong opinion about his statement, which is, how can you say that the father who's paying for the mortgage and the health insurance and all the things that go into making a household and children have a stable upbringing, how can you say that's not equal involvement? It's outside the house, but it's still grueling work and taxing work. And so making this film, I just really started to understand the male gender role, the amount of sacrifice in that, and so then of course have more compassion and gratitude towards my boyfriend and my stepfather.
I joined their paid team.
Thank you, that's good. I'm wondering, no pressure here, you've done a lot of work on this for years, right? I'm just wondering, do you have another documentary project in mind, or one that you're working on right now?
Take a break.
Oh, I've been thinking of a lot of different topics. I hope to start a new project in 2017, either spring or summer, once this film is out online and has fled the nest. But I haven't picked the topic yet. I'm sure it'll be something further into what I've learned the past 3.5 years. So I'm not sure what that means yet, but I've been toying around with some different topics.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Someone you were talking to in the movie mentioned white nationalists. Would you be willing to do a documentary on the alt-right movement?
Nice.
Nice. Ooh.
That'd be interesting. That's a good idea.
Just play it
I'll
safe.
definitely consider it.
Yeah.
Be safe.
They're not nice people.
Maybe I'll give a quick one. Is there any chance that you, I don't know if you would have any involvement in this, but having this film in a university setting, in a gender studies classroom, I think would be an excellent idea. I think every student who's studying gender studies should see this film in particular, and I'm just wondering if you have any control over whether that happens, or if you can push for that, or...
Well, it ultimately comes down to the university's decision if they want to include the film, either a screening on campus or include the film in their school library, we have had some purchases of the film to be added to the library, so that's great. But we don't have any plans yet for a gender studies classroom to screen the film. I'm definitely going to start a campaign to reach out to gender studies programs in case they haven't heard of the film yet. But I agree with you, it definitely needs to be, you know, screened there as, to inspire discussion, and I think this film does inspire discussion, even if, you know, people are disagree with what's said in the film, or I don't know, I think, you know, at least watch the film, and if you disagree, then talk about why or what's your perspective, and just, you know, use it as a stepping stone to be more educated, you know.
Thank you. Just remember to give lots of trigger warnings.
I was told to put a trigger warning on the film by a feminist.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
Okay, hi, my name is Dan, and I've been involved with the men's movement now for quite some time, like way back with Dave Shackleton when he had his Everyman magazine. Like, I mean, I've been involved for about 20 years. Anyway, my question is, well, like, yeah, my comment maybe is, like, I feel like things have come full circle with your film. For me, things have really come full circle with, you've got so much good stuff in your film, and for me, things have just come full circle. Have people felt that way about your film? Like, you're kind of really summing up the men's movement and all the issues involved, and you're kind of, well, the red pill kind of brings things, you know, kind of to completion, to kind of full circle. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Do you mean just kind of wrapping it all up into an easily digestible way for the average person?
Yes, and also kind of arriving, yes.
Yeah.
I guess that's my.
Yeah,
you could comment on my.
Oh.
Sorry.
And however you asked that question, your audio is perfect. So whatever you did, it worked well. I don't know if you're standing close to the computer or something. But I've of course have been reading and all the film reviews coming out from, you know, any spot on the spectrum of gender politics or ideologies, and also watching the video reviews. A lot of YouTubers will go watch the film and do a video review on YouTube, which was really fun to watch. And what I've learned from some of the audiences is that a lot of men's rights activists, they do enjoy the film, and they feel like the film can be something they could give to a family member or a friend who doesn't get them or doesn't understand the issues, to get them up to speed so that they can be on the same page and have these discussions. So they do, men's rights activists have viewed this film as a good conversation starter for them to reach out to their friends and family. But men's rights activists have also said that they didn't, many, not all, have said that they didn't learn much from the film, that they already knew a lot of these topics, that they wish it went into depth into some other topics, like more into suicide or boys in school, or more of circumcision, false accusations, you know, a lot of important issues. And then the feminists that have interviewed the film, the ones that I've met with in person at the theaters going to the screenings have been very positive, saying that they really enjoyed it, that it really opened their eyes, that they have thought, you know, that men's issues are being ignored. So there's a lot of, I guess, equity feminists that have been positive towards the film. And then most of the negative reviews we've gotten are, you know, agenda-driven articles online, and a lot of misinformation being spread. But as far as the full circle, I think I feel like this film is really just the beginning of a bigger discussion about men's issues, though, because I know that the film doesn't say everything that there is to say, and it really is just kind of skimming the surface of, you know, 101. How, in my audience that I was thinking of when I was editing this film was to reach people who were like I was 4 years ago before making this film. So bring them up to speed with these issues in a gentle way. I didn't want to make a film with a lot of facts or just really heavy with electronic music that's, you know, really blaring, and just, I knew for me that would have been too much new information too quickly and aggressively. So, you know, a lot of this film is trying to ease people into these topics with an open mind, hoping they have an open mind. But yeah, I don't know about the full circle. Maybe I feel like we're just beginning the circle with this film. But saying I was never a feminist, or that I was, you know, funded by MRAs, which is a big one that is used to discredit the film, because I did a Kickstarter campaign that both feminists and men's rights activists contributed to, but a majority of the people that contributed to the Kickstarter were somewhere in the middle and didn't self-identify as either MRA or feminist. And the reason I know that is because a lot of them emailed me or messaged me saying why they were supporting the film. And most of them were advocates for free speech and anti-censorship. So that's a lot of where our support is coming from. You know, just wanting an open market for ideas, you know, and that's really is under attack right now. What are some of the other lies? Yeah.
That really makes you wonder who the fake news networks are, eh?
Right, fake news?
I know. Was that Steve Brule?
No, Steve Brule is cool.
Are you? You sound like him. You're not him. Are you?
No, I'm Victor.
Oh, sorry, Victor. I can't see you.
We are going to sign off. Cassie?
Okay.
Okay, thank you so much for the film and all the wonderful work you've done. I know it's been a lot of work, but it's great work, and it's work that needs to be done. And Cafe really appreciates it, because it's really helped us to launch our fundraiser for the Center for Men and Families in Ottawa. So I really appreciate your work, and thank you very much.
Hey, one last tidbit to leave everyone on a happy note. Fred Haywards, who is included in the film with his 14-year child custody battle, has reunited with his son. And his son, who's now 23, came to our LA premiere and loved the film.
Great. Thank you, Cassie. Bye.
Bye, Cassie.
Bye.